earlier transfer paintings, I thought was maybe they weren't missing it, but maybe I was missing it in my own work, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But then that led to work that was a little more colorful, where I was pulling with I would pour a lot of colors onto the canvas and then pull with a squeegee, and it kind of mimicking some of the techniques glassers use, like
Right.
resin. And I actually learned that technique glassing a surfboard down in Florida through with Mike Pachonas, that is someone that Rod introduced me to while I was down there to do an artist talk at the Florida Atlantic University. So, again, this is how like being in surfing and like learning like how like certain techniques within like glassing and then bringing that to painting is, just as relevant as doing something that's more specifically surfing visually, at least for me. But I started doing these like squeegee pole paintings and then putting transfer on top of that. And then I showed those a little bit in New York But then we moved in to the house we're in now, and I moved my studio into the third floor, on the bottom floor, and started doing these collages that really excited me. And it kind of took me back to doing the kind of piece poster collage thing, but I took the computer completely out of it. But I dug back through a lot of old work, like even work from like right when I got out of graduate school, and started cutting it up and looking at shapes, and then thinking about the experience and process of shaping surfboards and glassing, and then using that experience, so like not it specifically, but the experience of doing it and bringing it into the process of like cutting up and looking for shapes in these collages.
Right.
And the process of doing that, I would make a collage, turn it over, cut more shapes out of it, and like collage the collage, and kind of doing an analog version of what I was doing in the computer.
Right. I specifically remember that body of work. You completed a pretty significant body of work when you showed me that series when the work started clicking, and I was like, yes, this is it. I felt like that momentum shift had just like kind of like really taken hold, and I think that's when your work started to fly. Again, up in Rhode Island.
So at what point up in Rhode Island did you decide to start shaping some boards?
Pretty soon after getting here. I think I was only here a year or two. I had a friend. I had shaped. I'm going to back up a little bit, back to Mike Pachonas down in Bloomfield. When I was there giving the talk, and Rod took me over to Mike's shop, or it's really his factory. I actually really bonded with Mike, and he thought it was interesting. He's a very different person. He thought I was interesting, that we got along, even though I was like this New York person and he's like this Florida person, and I had to remind him I'm from Florida. But he invited me to come down at my leisure whenever I wanted to, and I could stay with him, and we would do a board. And then he would show me the steps of shaping, and then we would do the color work of the glassing part, because doing the finishing sanding would be done by someone else at a later time. So maybe, I can't remember the exact timing. I want to say maybe 6 months went by, and I reached out to Mike and said, hey, I have time. I'll come down, and how much time do you think? And I think we did like 3 or 4 days. I flew down, he picked me up at the airport, and went directly to the factory and went right to work at learning how to shape. And the first thing he had me do is we hot wired sup blanks out of a big block of foam. And he looked at me and he said, "You're not going to get in there and use a planer until you really understand like the full, like how this starts. The blank I'm going to give you to shape already has a lot of work done to it, but you need to understand what that is." So, which he was talking about rocker template. So we hot wired these big sup blanks. The reason we did the sup stuff is if they're so big, there's a lot more room for mistake, and you can still fix it. So we did that, and then I shaped a big sup as practice, and then he gave me the blank, and we sat down and we worked out a template, blending various different templates. We did an 8-foot board. It was supposed to be for my wife, but that's another.
We all know how that goes. Yeah.
Which is fine. We can talk about that also, just in terms of like having something that's just for you. Like surfing is for me, but I do other things with my family that we do as a family. But and Mike was great, and that was a great experience, and I'm very, very thankful for that. And we worked right up till like going to the airport to come home. It was, staying up late, getting up early. Like we got up at like 4:35, water, surf, come back to the factory, work, lunch, water, back, work, dinner, sleep. Like that's basically what we did when I was there. And to be perfectly honest, like that first board, I was really intimidated by the planer. It took a lot longer than it should have, because I just was afraid to put that planer on and start hacking away at it, because with shaping, you can take it away, but you can't put it back. So I was doing a lot of hand work on the board so I wouldn't take too much away. But, fast forward, moved to Rhode Island. I wanted to shape a fish. I was really interested in the fish design and the history of fish. And at the time, it was also in the air, and here in Rhode Island, a fish is a very useful board to have. It makes sense to have a fish here.
So what kind of fish? Do you have like a Steve List kind of inspiration? Like what did you?
No, it was totally all Steve List. There's actually a book where he has plans of that book drawn out, and all of the numbers are in it, and that's what I used. I forget the name. It's the Steve Kunstl book, Surfing Design or something like that. It's the book that was in, I think it's the film Seaworthy, where they make that fish. They use that book. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
I watched. I love that film, and I watched it over and over again, especially in that time and prior to that, like being in New York. But those plans, which I knew about the book and those plans because of that film. You can go online and just look it up. It's there. There's a PDF you can download, and it's all there. But I wanted to have two things. I wanted something historical that's kind of like the ground zero of where fish came from. So, Steve List. And then something that I could wrap my head around and have numbers to go off of. So when I'm drawing the template, I'm not just drawing in air. I have numbers to look at and refer to get it right, at least as right as, an amateur can do. And then I met a friend by the name of Jason May, who's also an artist / illustrator who lives in Hope Valley. He has a shaping bay in his basement, and he has all the tools and the glassing experience that we were fast friends. He said, "Sure, you can come do it at my place." So I ordered the blank, got the blank. I made several templates so I could get it right, at least as right as I could. Finally settled on the template that I was going to put on the masonite, cut that out, and got the curve as good as I could. I ended up making more later, but on this one board, I used this one particular template that was kind of a blend of Liz and a Mabel. I had a really awesome 5'6" Mabel fish that the same friend that introduced me to Jason, he's one of these, I'll call him a gypsy kind of guy who's just like always around, always has some kind of deal, hustle thing happening, always kind of a few things, few irons in the fire, so to speak, to kind of keep life moving ahead. And somehow he ended up with this Mabel fish. And he's not really a fish guy. And the board maybe was a little small for him, but it was like just right for me. And he showed it to me, and immediately I looked at it and I looked at him and I just took it. And I was like, I need this board. And he was like, well, why don't you borrow it? Because the guy I got it from, it was some story. He's like, just hang on to it. I was like, okay, but I'm going to surf it. He's like, yeah, surf it. Anyhow, my friend that was letting me borrow the board that someone was letting him borrow, like ended up on the other side of Rhode Island, but I still had the board, gave me the contact info of the guy that had it, and I said, I just all through text, I just texted, it's like, I need this board, what do you want? Can you sell it? He's like, yeah, I'll sell it. PayPal me, $250. I was like, done, But I loved that board and surfed it, almost exclusively for a year. And so I knew the curves in it were a little more modern. I think the nose is a little more pulled, and I think the tail is a little more pulled. But I kind of blended, at least in my mind, what I thought was a good idea, so who knows if it was or not. The Liz template and the Mabel template. And then I spent a lot of time studying the rocker of the Liz plans versus the Mabel. I also had a couple of other fish, and then that I studied and like really dissected and measured. And I went, particularly rocker. I think rocker is like super important. And I think also gets overlooked a lot in surf design, at least when people talk about it casually.
Absolutely. Was this before or after you started your collaborations with Trim and Glide and kind of the influences there?
Well, I've never really officially collaborated with them, but I've always kind of been on the kind of periphery of what was happening. Mm-hmm. I've had the pleasure and the good fortune of meeting like really amazing people in the surf industry, but it's not because I'm made an effort to do it. I just somehow end up meeting them and end up being friends with a lot of them, and I'm grateful to it. But I've never, in an official like artist way, I've collaborated with them. But I have gone down to the heavens and like sat in the shaping room with Ryan while he's shaping me a board. I have ordered lots of boards through Phil in the heavens, Trimcraft boards, Lovelace boards. I had a really amazing fish, the rich fish that was a Trimcraft board that while Ryan was down, he did the pin lines because I didn't ask for anything too special because the Trimcraft brand, at least at the time, they were just trying to standardize it. Like you had only certain colors you could pick, and the logo lamination went in one specific place, which was fine. Like I'm not at least now I'm not too fussy about the color or the glassing of the board. But they surprised me by putting these gold pin lines on the outside of the board, which from what I hear is lost somewhere in the sea out in Indo right now.
What's the tell